You've been there. The silence, the wait, the countless nights of asking yourself, do they even care? And just when you've managed to reclaim a piece of your peace, there it is, a text, out of nowhere, unexpected, unsettling. Their name, lighting up your screen like a ghost from your emotional past, tempting you back into the very confusion you fought so hard to leave behind. But here's the real question. What if that message isn't the beginning of something new, but the return of something unfinished, unhealed, and unhealthy? What if replying isn't closure, but collapse? We live in a world that teaches us to interpret attention as affection and a message as a milestone. But how many of us have mistaken curiosity for care, or a late night "I miss you" for real change? Let me challenge that belief. What if that text is not a breakthrough, but bait? What if their message has less to do with love and more to do with control? Welcome to one of the most overlooked turning points in modern connection, and one of the most deceptive. This isn't about bitterness, it's about clarity. This isn't about rejecting someone to feel powerful, it's about protecting the power you've already built in their absence. You see, most people think they need to reply to find peace, but what if silence is your peace? What if the true measure of growth isn't what you say to them, but what you've already said to yourself during the silence? That's the shift. That's the revelation. That's what we're uncovering here. In this video, we're going deep, not into them, but into you, into the why behind their message, the truth behind your emotions, and the power behind your pause. You're not just going to learn how to respond, you're going to learn why you might not need to. Together, we'll explore 7 core truths, each rooted in Stoicism, each designed to guard your emotional kingdom and sharpen your self-mastery. We're not just discussing texts, we're dismantling patterns. We're not waiting for answers, we're creating alignment. If you've ever felt like your peace is fragile when they reach out, this is the moment where it becomes untouchable. This is about Stoic relationships, the kind that start within, not from someone else's reappearance. So don't blink, don't skip, because the part that comes next, that's where it gets real. That's where we shift your power from their words back to your worth. One, real love requires real accountability, not breadcrumbs. You're staring at that message, reading it over and over, and a small part of you feels seen again, maybe even hopeful. It's short, maybe sweet, a compliment, a memory, something that pokes at the version of you who still wonders, what if they've changed? But pause. Not all messages are what they seem. Words without weight are just noise. Stoicism teaches us to judge not by surface, but by substance. And in Stoic relationships, that's the rule. So let's look closely. Has this person truly acknowledged how they hurt you? Have they taken ownership of their actions, their silence, their abandonment? Or is this just a breadcrumb, just enough to reignite your emotions without offering anything real? Because if all they're giving you is nostalgia, flattery, or a vague "I miss you," that's not a bridge, that's bait. And if you've ever taken the bait before, you know how that story goes. One sweet sentence turns into a spiral. You read too deeply into their words. You start imagining a reunion. You believe once again in potential. But here's the brutal truth. If it lacks accountability, direction, and consistency, it is not a return, it is a rerun. And you already survived the first version. What you're being offered is not connection, it's convenience. It's a message sent in a moment of weakness or boredom, not growth. Don't confuse that. Don't romanticize a breadcrumb into a full course. The truth is, people who are serious about making amends don't show up empty-handed. They don't send vague messages and expect you to fill in the blanks. They come with intention. They address the past. They speak plainly. They ask what you need. They show they've done the work, and even then, it's still your choice. Stoicism teaches us the power of restraint, the strength of not reacting just because we can. It's easy to respond. It's easy to fall back into something familiar. But what's harder and more powerful is to evaluate that message through the lens of your self-respect, not your past wounds. This isn't about bitterness or holding a grudge. It's about discernment. Because if you take the breadcrumb and tell yourself it's love, you're starving yourself of what you truly deserve. And what is that exactly? Clarity, accountability, consistency, truth. Anything less is emotional survival, not emotional connection. You are not meant to survive love. You are meant to thrive in it. And love that thrives is built on effort, not just emotion. So ask yourself, are they offering effort or access? Are they trying to rebuild or simply reopen a door they walked away from? If they can't name what they did wrong, if they can't express why they're reaching out now, if they can't give you anything more than vague sentiment, then this is not reconciliation. It's recognition, and that's not the same. They may recognize your value now, but where was that recognition when you needed it? Why does it only show up in silence? Why does it come after you've begun to heal? These are not cynical questions. These are stoic questions, questions that protect your peace. And if they can't meet you in that peace with humility, they don't deserve a reply. You are not cold for expecting more. You are not unforgiving for wanting something real. You are not difficult for requiring depth. You are wise. You are grounded. You are building a life where emotional scraps don't satisfy you anymore. Because here's what Stoicism reminds us. If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it. If this message isn't true, if it doesn't align with the truth of who you are and what you need, then it does not deserve your attention. That isn't cruelty. That's clarity. And clarity, when protected, becomes peace. This is the emotional diet you've chosen to leave behind. You no longer beg for love in between the lines of vague texts. You no longer chase closure through the same doors that once shattered you. You no longer reduce yourself to a second chance for someone who couldn't hold your heart the first time. If they want to return, let them bring more than words. Let them bring change. Let them bring presence. Let them show you, not tell you, that they understand who you are now and what you deserve. And until then, you owe them nothing. Not a reply, not a reaction, not a piece of your new peace. Because if their message can undo everything you've rebuilt, then you haven't anchored yourself deeply enough in your worth. Let this be your reminder to root down, to stay grounded, to trust the work you've done in silence. Because real love doesn't just show up when it's easy, it shows up when it's ready to do the work. And if they're not ready to carry the weight of your worth, then they are not worthy of your response. You have earned this peace. You have rebuilt your life with the bricks they left scattered. You've become someone who no longer needs to explain why you're stronger now. You just are, and your silence, that's not rejection, that's reflection. That's a message louder than any reply. So before you answer that text, ask yourself, is this person bringing real accountability, or are they just reminding you of their presence without taking any responsibility for their past? If the answer is the latter, then silence is not just the best response. It's the most powerful declaration of who you've become. And that is the foundation of Stoic relationships. Clarity over confusion, peace over performance, strength over sentiment. Let that guide you now. 2. A text isn't proof of change, it's a test of yours. So they texted you, you saw their name pop up, and your breath caught in your chest for just a second. That familiar ache, the mental flood of memories, the moment of internal negotiation. Should you respond? Should you act casual or act cold? And more than anything, the question that creeps in, does this mean something? Maybe they've finally realized your value. Maybe they've grown. Maybe this is your second chance. But pause. That's the part your heart wants to believe. Now ask what your reasoned mind has to say. This is the precise moment where emotional discipline becomes a mirror, not for them, for you. Because more often than not, a sudden text isn't the return of love. It's the return of opportunity for a them and a test for you. Stoicism teaches us to separate the signal from the noise. Their message is just that, a signal. But what it signals isn't always change. Sometimes it's discomfort, sometimes it's loneliness, sometimes it's curiosity, ego, or a desire to reinsert themselves into your life without taking any real accountability. If you mistake a ping for a pivot, you're setting yourself up to romanticize confusion. The truth? A text isn't a declaration of change. It's a test of how far you've come. When someone reaches out after leaving, disappearing, or abandoning you during a chapter you were forced to finish alone, their return doesn't rewrite the past. It doesn't suddenly balance the scales. It doesn't undo what you had to learn without them. And here's where Stoic relationships show their depth. We are not reactive creatures. We are reflective beings. We don't respond based on what we want to be true. We respond based on what we know to be true. And the truth is, real change doesn't whisper from a distance. It shows up consistently, with accountability, with intention, with clarity. If you find yourself filling in the gaps of their message with hope, you're already doing too much. A text that says, "Hey, stranger," isn't an apology. "I miss you" isn't growth. "Just thinking about you" isn't a plan. So ask yourself, what are they really saying? More importantly, what are they not saying? Are they owning their role in your pain? Are they acknowledging the silence? Are they stepping in with more than just words? If not, this isn't healing. This is ego maintenance. And your emotional response? That's the battlefield. That's where you'll find out whether you've truly healed or whether you're still waiting for something external to validate your worth. You're not obligated to respond. You're not obligated to give them space they forfeited. You don't owe them the comfort of your emotional presence just because they decided to show up again. Stoicism isn't coldness. It's control. It's the mastery of response. It's the ability to sit with a triggered emotion and not let it dictate your next move. It's that sacred pause between impulse and action. They might be testing the waters, but you're testing your self-respect. This is not a game. This is your life, your healing, your peace. And it only survives if you're vigilant. They might want to see if the door is still open. You decide if that door ever gets knocked on again, let alone opened. The person who texts you, "I miss you," without ever owning what they did to lose you, isn't reuniting. They're recycling, and recycled connection always spoils the same way. Ask yourself, are you reacting from strength or from a scar? Are you seeing them as they are, or as you hope they've become? Because hope without evidence is emotional self-sabotage. It's nostalgia dressed up as potential. If they really cared, they wouldn't be vague. They wouldn't send texts without substance. They wouldn't test your peace without earning your presence. Your healing isn't a waiting room. Your silence isn't an invitation. And your attention isn't a reward for someone who hasn't changed. That text, it's just a tool, a probe, a symbol of curiosity, maybe even regret. But regret without responsibility is still selfish. They don't get to reappear with a few words and expect you to drop everything you rebuilt. This is where you draw the line. This is the moment you reclaim your narrative. You didn't endure all that pain, all those nights of overthinking, all that growth, just to get pulled back in by a string of pixels on a screen. The person you've become didn't rise from heartbreak just to hand your strength back to the source of your confusion. You've become your own anchor. You've learned to validate your worth in silence. You've journaled, cried, breathed through the nights that almost broke you. You've transformed your life into one that doesn't orbit their attention anymore. Don't trade that empire for an empty message. This is your test, not theirs. The test of your detachment. The test of your discernment. The test of your discipline. And if you pass, you don't just avoid pain, you ascend to a higher level of peace. Stoicism isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about realizing you don't need to. That your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's presence, that you can acknowledge their message without letting it unseat your healing, that you can feel the emotion and still choose to move with reason. It's about choosing what aligns with your future, not what tempts you with fragments from your past. Your reaction is your revelation. So if you read that message and feel your heart racing, your mind spinning, pause, reflect, breathe, ask, what would the healed version of me do right now? Would they respond just to feel wanted? Or would they recognize that they're already whole, already enough, already standing in the strength they built? You don't need a reply to feel powerful. You don't need engagement to feel worthy. The test isn't about them. It never was. It's about you. Can you hold your power? Can you sit in silence and let it speak louder than your emotions? Can you let the moment pass without making it mean something it doesn't? That is the mastery of Stoic relationships. And when you embody that, you don't just pass the test, you transcend the need for it altogether. Now, if this message spoke to you, if you felt that fire in your chest, that clarity rising, that strength stabilizing, then this is your moment. Like this video and comment number 1 if this part of the message resonated with your soul. Subscribe right now, because this journey isn't about playing emotional games. It's about building real strength, creating peace that lasts, and mastering the art of not needing validation to move forward. We're just getting started. 3. Check-in texts are ego traps, not connectio. There's something disarmingly simple about a check-in text. Hey, how have you been? Just thinking of you? Hope everything's okay. It lands in your inbox without warning, and your heart stirs just a little. Maybe it's 2 a.m., or maybe it's a random weekday when you finally felt like you were getting over them. Suddenly, you're in your head again, asking yourself, what does this mean? But slow down. In the realm of Stoic relationships, clarity must come before curiosity. You must be willing to see through the fog of feelings and into the framework of motives, because not every check-in is about connection. Often, it's about access. Not emotional depth, but emotional proximity. They're not always saying, I want to rebuild. Sometimes they're just saying, I want to know if I still matter. Think about that. This isn't about mutual healing. It's about one person throwing a breadcrumb into your emotional waters, hoping you'll bite, hoping you'll still react, hoping they can feel important again in a life they once walked out of. And if you've ever responded too quickly, you've felt the trap. The way your emotional energy shifts back to them, the way you start anticipating their next message, the way you begin to reread old texts and wonder what could be resurrected from old ashes. But let's ground this in truth. Real connection doesn't come cloaked in ambiguity. It shows up with intent, with humility, with the courage to confront the damage it once caused. A check-in text isn't courage, it's convenience, and often it's ego. Their ego may be bruised by your silence, your strength, your distance. Your lack of reaction becomes the very signal that prompts their message. This isn't about love, it's about leverage. Emotional access gives them a sense of control, a reassurance that they're still tethered to your heart in some way. But you are not a tether. You are not someone's fallback plan, emotional safety net, or curiosity project. Stoicism teaches us that freedom lies in understanding what is within our control, and nothing threatens that freedom more than attaching significance to meaningless gestures. You must ask, if this message had come from someone who never hurt you, would you still assign it the same emotional weight? Or is it only powerful because of who it came from and what they represent in your past? Often, we're not reacting to the message itself, but to the unresolved longing it triggers. That's not connection, that's self-deception, and it's dangerous because it creates an illusion of progress. You start imagining conversations that haven't happened. You build narratives around fragments. You assign meaning to their timing, their words, their tone. But what if there's no deeper meaning? What if it's just a ping, sent not from a place of emotional maturity, but emotional entitlement? They're not checking in because they miss you. They're checking in because they miss being missed. That's the game of ego. It doesn't seek reconciliation. It seeks relevance. When someone checks in after abandoning you in confusion without first offering clarity or accountability, they're not building a bridge. They're testing the door. And if you open it too easily, you teach them that no matter how poorly they behaved, access to you will always be available at the price of a polite sentence. That's the real trap. Not the message, but what it conditions you to accept. That vague words are enough. That timing means more than truth. That presence means progress. But in the philosophy of Stoicism, nothing could be further from the truth. Real relationships are not born from reactivity, but from reflection. They are not sparked by random pings, but by intentional presence. So if you're being checked in on, don't just analyze the message. Analyze the pattern. Did they disappear when you needed them most? Did they leave you with unanswered questions? Did they show any growth since then? Or did they simply go silent until the discomfort of your absence became too loud to ignore? And now that they're back, what are they offering? Are they giving you clarity? Are they asking how they can make amends? Or are they floating in and out, hoping to get emotional reassurance without doing the emotional labor? This is where your power lies, in recognizing that not all attention is affection and not all outreach is effort. Your worth is not measured by how many people remember you when they're bored, lonely, or regretful. It's measured by how firmly you guard your peace against shallow sentiments that lack substance. So when that check-in text arrives, don't rush to respond. Sit with it. Breathe through the emotion. Detach from the illusion. Ask yourself, am I about to reply from a place of self-worth or self-doubt? Because every reply that comes from old wounds reopens the scar. Every emotional investment in vague messages is a withdrawal from your inner bank of peace. And peace, once lost, is expensive to rebuild. You've worked too hard to stabilize yourself, to unlearn the emotional reflexes that once made you respond to anything that looked like love. You've spent too many nights reclaiming your identity outside of their perception. Don't throw that progress away for a text that says everything and nothing at once. Let them show up with more. Let them come not with pings, but with plans. Not with nostalgia, but with new behavior. Not with thinking of you, but with, here's how I want to make things right. And until they do, recognize a check-in for what it is, a test of your emotional gravity. You're not here to be someone's gravity. You're not here to pull them back into themselves. You are your own orbit. You've created momentum without them. Don't slow down for someone who only reaches out when your silence gets inconvenient. This is what Stoic relationships demand, a loyalty to your peace greater than your need for answers. Because in the end, vague messages don't require reaction, they require realization. Realization that your time, your energy, your attention is sacred. And sacred things are not handed over casually, they are earned. If someone wants a place in your life again, let them work for it. Let them show you, not tell you, that they're capable of holding space in your new world. And until then, remember that ego seeks permission, but love seeks transformation. Choose accordingly. This is your test. You already have the wisdom to pass it. 4. Emotional silence is a mirror for them and for you. You've been quiet, purposefully, powerfully quiet. Not out of pettiness or pride, but out of a decision rooted in self-respect. You stopped chasing, you stopped explaining, you stopped trying to convince someone of your value when they couldn't. See it, and that's silence. It's louder than you think. It echoes in the space they once filled. It unsettles the very ego that thought you'd always be there. Now they've texted you, and suddenly the silence is broken. But here's the truth. It was never your silence that needed to be broken. It was their understanding, their accountability, their growth. And if all they bring back into your life is a few casual words, you must remember what that silence taught you. Stoicism teaches us that silence isn't absence, it's awareness. It's a state of inner clarity where you detach from things you cannot control. Your silence became a mirror. It showed you who they really were when they no longer had power over your emotions. And more importantly, it showed them who you became when they no longer had access to your vulnerability. That mirror is uncomfortable, not just for them, but sometimes for you too. Because silence has a way of forcing us to confront the parts of ourselves that used to react, reach out, or retreat. It holds up a reflection of our emotional impulses and asks, are you still defined by the same patterns that once broke you? This is where Stoic relationships reveal their greatest truth. Your peace is a direct result of what you no longer respond to. When they text you after all this time, it's not necessarily a sign that they've changed. Often, it's a sign that your silence became inconvenient, that your distance created discomfort, that their ego is craving reassurance more than their heart is seeking reconciliation. And in that moment, you must decide not who they are, but who you are now. Are you the version of yourself that used to rush toward closure, that used to interpret every message as a lifeline? Or are you the version that understands silence is not weakness, it's strength, it's sovereignty? It's the language of someone who no longer begs for connection, but filters everything through the lens of inner peace. If they didn't come back with clarity, with responsibility, with emotional presence, then their message is not an invitation. It's a test of how much of your power you're willing to give away. Remember, emotional silence is not passive, it's active restraint. It's the decision not to disturb the balance you fought to create. And when that text arrives, you don't have to respond. You don't have to decode it, obsess over it, or reply just to prove you've moved on. You show growth not by engaging, but by evaluating. Is their presence an addition to your life or a subtraction from your healing? Because Stoicism reminds us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. It's not their message that's dangerous, it's the meaning you assign to it, the hope it triggers, the longing it awakens. But hope without change is delusion, longing without standards is self-betrayal, and no message, no matter how kind, clever, or timely, should have the power to interrupt your peace unless it comes with the full weight of accountability. You've come too far, you've cried too many nights, you've questioned yourself to the point of exhaustion. And now, finally, you've reached a place of stillness. Not the kind that comes from pretending to be over it, but the kind that comes from actually healing. That's what makes your silence golden. And when they check in, when they poke at your peace with a message that's vague and emotionally non-committal, they're not coming back for you. They're coming back for access, for ego, for validation. So don't let your silence be mistaken for emotional availability. Let it remain what it is, a boundary, a statement, a sacred space. You are no longer emotionally orbiting them. You are no longer the version of yourself that needed their approval to feel secure. Your silence isn't an open door, it's a closed chapter, unless, of course, they return with the tools to build something new. But even then, that takes more than words. It takes time, it takes consistent action, it takes a new way of being. Because the real mirror isn't just in your silence, it's in how you respond when your peace is tested. Do you allow a moment of nostalgia to disrupt months of progress? Do you let a sentence on a screen rewrite the story you finally put down? Or do you stay grounded in the truth that healing is not measured by how much you care, but by how wisely you protect what you've rebuilt? This is emotional maturity. This is self-mastery. This is the test you pass, not by what you say, but by what you refuse to give energy to. And if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can breathe through the uncertainty and still choose peace, you've already won. Because the real lesson isn't about whether they come back. It's about whether you let them re-enter without earning their place. This is the heartbeat of Stoic relationships. We don't confuse attention with affection. We don't trade peace for potential. We don't move backward just because someone suddenly remembers our worth. We protect what we've built. We respect who we've become. And we only open the door when what's on the other side matches the value of what's within. So if you've felt the tug of nostalgia, the pull of possibility, the fear of missing out on something meaningful, remember, not all returns are redemptive. Some are just reflective. Some are just reminders. Some are just echoes of the past knocking on your door, hoping you've forgotten how hard it was to close it. Don't forget, and don't fold. Hold the line. Let your silence remain unshaken. Let your peace remain your highest standard. Because if they truly see your value now, they'll return with more than timing. They'll return with truth. And until then, you are not obligated to respond. You are only obligated to honor your growth. Now, if that message hit your soul, take a moment to honor that strength, like this video, and comment number 1 if you felt this reminder in your spirit. Subscribe to this channel right now, because we're not just here to talk. We're here to evolve, protect peace, and lead lives of power built through stillness. This is just the beginning. 5. Ask yourself, what do you want? When the message comes, when that screen lights up with a name you haven't seen in weeks or months, the natural question is always, what do they want? You start examining their words like a detective looking for clues. You think about their timing, their tone, their intent. But here's the truth, and it's the one Stoicism forces us to confront. The question isn't about them, it's about you. What do you want? Because the minute you focus solely on their motives, their intentions, their feelings, you've already handed over your power. And in Stoic relationships, power is not something you give away lightly. Their text, no matter how surprising or sentimental, is irrelevant if it doesn't align with your current emotional truth. So stop overanalyzing them and start examining yourself. What is it you actually want from this exchange? Is it peace, or is it the fantasy of reconnection? Is it healing, or is it a recycled storyline where you feel seen again, if only for a moment? And be honest, because growth requires truth, not comfort. If the idea of replying fills you with more anxiety than assurance, more confusion than clarity, that's your answer. They're not coming to complete something. They're coming to reopen something you already closed. And you didn't close that chapter because it was easy. You closed it because it was necessary. Now the temptation is to look for meaning in their return, to believe the story your heart wants to write, that this time things will be different. But what if that story is fiction? What if their message isn't about love or even regret, but about timing? What if they reached out not because they realized your worth, but because they felt your absence? That's not love, that's discomfort. And discomfort often motivates people to reach out, not to change, but to reassure themselves that they're still relevant. So again, ask yourself, what do you want? Not what your old self wanted, not what the emotionally starved part of you still craves. But what does the healed version of you want right now in this moment? Does this message serve your peace or pull you back into doubt? Does it align with your current values, your new standards, or does it tempt you to revisit a version of yourself that no longer exists? These are not rhetorical questions. These are the very questions that define whether you fall into the cycle again or break it for good. Because a text is not a reset button, it's a ripple. It stirs the waters of what used to be. And if you're not careful, you'll dive back in before you realize there's nothing there to swim toward. Your healing gave you more than peace. It gave you perspective. And with that perspective comes the ability to choose from awareness, not impulse. That's what Stoicism gives us, the gap between emotion and action, the breath before the decision. And in that breath lies your entire transformation. So when they text you, stop, breathe, don't react, reflect. What do you truly want? Are you still looking for closure? Are you still hoping for validation? Are you still waiting for them to say the words they never said, to fix what they broke, without doing the real work? Because if so, you're not ready to reply. You're ready to journal, to sit with the discomfort, to understand that not every unanswered question gets an answer from someone else. Sometimes closure isn't given, it's chosen. And when you choose closure, you stop needing someone else to provide it. You become it. That's where your power begins. Not in a reply, but in your refusal to let external voices define your internal peace. If this person truly deserves a place in your life again, it won't be because of a clever text. It will be because their actions match your expectations. Because they return with real change, not temporary curiosity. Because they respect the space your silence created. Until then, everything else is a distraction, a pull, a pause in your progress. Don't let your past self decide for your present self. You are no longer that version. You are wiser now, clearer, more rooted in who you are. And that version of you isn't easily swayed by a few well-timed words. That version doesn't need someone else to define their worth. That version knows that real connection doesn't feel confusing. It doesn't make you question your stability. It doesn't take your peace hostage and ransom it for attention. If you're still asking, what do they want? You're looking in the wrong direction. The better question is, what do you want from yourself? From your healing, from your future? That's the compass now. Let that guide your response or your silence. Because responding just to be polite, just to satisfy curiosity, just to see what might happen, that's not growth, that's gambling. And you've already lost too much to bet on a maybe. You've earned your peace through nights of doubt and days of discipline. Don't trade that in for a digital breadcrumb, especially not when you know what you really want now. Alignment, not attachment, truth, not tension, depth, not drama. That is the new standard. That is the result of your emotional work. And anything that threatens that, no matter how familiar, must be questioned, must be paused, must be seen for what it really is. This is what it means to live as a creator of your emotional experience, not just a reactor to someone else's. It's not about controlling the text or their motives or their timing. It's about controlling what energy you allow to shape your path. So take a moment, not to react, but to reclaim, to look within and ask, what do I want, really, from them, from this moment, from the version of me I've fought to become? If that answer leads you toward your peace, follow it. If it leads you toward their message, make sure you're not just seeking comfort in what once caused chaos, because now your peace is not a project, it's a priority. Let it be louder than any impulse to return to what you've already outgrown. 6. You don't need to prove your worth. You already have it. There's a quiet but powerful impulse that often rises when someone texts you after a long silence. It's the urge to show them who you've become, to prove that you're not the same person they left behind, that you've grown, that you've healed, that you've leveled up in every way. You feel the weight of everything you've endured and the temptation to summarize your transformation in one perfect message. But here's what Stoicism makes clear. Real strength doesn't need an audience, and worth that's rooted in truth doesn't need to be broadcast. If you feel the urge to prove something, pause. Ask yourself, who are you proving it to? And more importantly, why? Is it because you want them to acknowledge your growth? Or Is it because part of you still seeks validation from the same place that once couldn't see your value? That's not empowerment, that's performance. And Stoic relationships don't perform. They exist in quiet strength, in internal mastery, in the understanding that true worth is self-sustaining. You don't need to narrate your evolution to someone who walked away before the story got good. You don't need to explain your silence, your success, your peace, because when you do, when you reach out with a carefully crafted message that says, "Look at me now," you're actually saying, "Please recognize me now." But their recognition was never the goal. Your healing was. And your healing isn't about them seeing you, it's about you seeing yourself, clearly, compassionately, completely. The most powerful form of growth isn't demonstrated through confrontation or conversation. It's revealed in how you live, in how you respond or don't, in how you no longer bend your boundaries to accommodate someone who only returns when they feel a void. Think about it. If they didn't see your worth when they had full access to you, what makes you think they truly see it now after a single message? Maybe they do. Maybe they've changed. Maybe their message comes from a place of genuine awareness. But genuine awareness doesn't demand a performance. It doesn't require you to prove anything. It meets you where you are, without expectation, without ego, without the need to be impressed. That's how you know it's real. So when you feel that inner voice rising up, the one that wants to say, "Look how far I've come," ask yourself, would the strongest version of me need to say that at all? Because strength doesn't shout. It doesn't chase validation. It stands still, calmly and confidently, unmoved by those who only see your value in hindsight. This is the kind of emotional clarity Stoicism teaches. You don't engage to be seen. You engage because it aligns with your principles. You don't respond out of a need to be heard. You respond only if there's something worth saying. And sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. Silence isn't avoidance, it's a statement. It's the language of someone who no longer plays the emotional games that once kept them stuck. When they text you and you feel that familiar pull, stop and ask, what part of me wants to prove something right now? Is it my healed self or the remnants of an older version of me who still wants to be chosen, acknowledged, loved by someone who couldn't love me then? If it's the latter, you already know the answer. You've outgrown that need. You don't have to perform your worth to someone who couldn't hold it when it was freely given. You don't need to script your healing like a resume. You're not applying for their attention anymore. You're not campaigning for a place in their life. You're standing in your own. And that space you've created, that emotional freedom, that unshakable center, it's not a prop for someone else's redemption arc. It's your sanctuary. And only those who come with humility, accountability, and presence deserve to step into it. If they can't see your worth without a highlight reel, they're not ready. If they need a speech to understand who you are now, they're still looking at you through the lens of their own limitations. And that's not your burden. You've done the work. You've transformed your pain into peace. You've taken the long road back to yourself. That's not something you need to explain. That's something you embody. And those who are truly aligned with you will feel it. They'll see it without needing proof. They'll meet you in your strength, not just your history. So don't trade your peace for a moment of recognition. Don't dilute your dignity just to remind someone you're no longer broken. You're not here to be a footnote in someone else's story of growth. You are the main character of your own. That's what Stoic relationships are made of. Two whole people walking their own paths, intersecting with integrity, not desperation. If they're meant to walk beside you again, it will be clear. Their words will match their actions. Their return will feel aligned, not disruptive. Their presence will add, not take. Until then, you don't owe them a response, an update, or a recap. You owe yourself your continued peace. You owe yourself silence when words would only reopen wounds. You owe yourself the loyalty they couldn't give you. And if they ever wonder why you didn't reply, let them wonder. Let your stillness speak. Let your growth be evident in the fact that you no longer need closure from the person who created the wound. You became your own closure. You became the resolution to the chapter they walked out on. That's your story now. That's your strength. And if you felt that reminder resonate with you today, let it guide your next step. Like this video and comment number 1 if this message helped you reclaim your peace. Subscribe to stay connected, because this space is where we build strength, protect our energy, and move forward not with emotional reaction, but with stoic clarity. We're just beginning. This is the moment where everything converges. The texts, the temptations, the truths you've faced through each part of this journey. They finally texted you. That message you once imagined, that moment you once thought would bring closure, clarity, or maybe even a second chance. But now, with everything you've seen, felt, and reflected on, you understand it wasn't about the text. It never was. It was always about what the text triggered, and more importantly, how you would respond. Not to them, but to yourself. The real story wasn't in their words. It was in your silence, your growth, your discipline to not be swayed by the pull of old emotions wearing new masks. You didn't just survive that chapter, they did. You evolved through it, you built from it. And now, that text is no longer a test of their intentions. It's a reflection of your boundaries, of your emotional sovereignty. You are not a second thought. You are not a backup plan. You are not a character in someone else's emotional redemption arc. You are the author of your own healing. And now the only question that remains is, what kind of peace are you willing to protect? Because texts will come, check-ins will happen, people will remember your light, sometimes too late. But that doesn't mean you dim yourself to accommodate their return. You don't trade your peace for potential. You don't rewrite old stories with the same ink. You hold your line. You sit in your worth. You move forward, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care more about yourself. That's not detachment. That's maturity. That's stoicism in motion, still grounded, unshaken. And if ever you feel doubt rise again, come back to this. You don't need to reply to a message that doesn't respect the journey it took for you to become who you are now. You don't owe anyone access to a heart they once mishandled. Your silence has spoken. Let it echo. Let it lead you into the next chapter. Not backward, but boldly forward. This isn't the end of your story. This is where your new standard begins.